In the affluent suburbs of a city, a seemingly normal 15-year-old named Elliot Drake lives a life that others envy. Intelligent, well-liked, but with a deep-set tension bubbling under the surface. Beneath his outwardly perfect life, there are signs of a troubling family dynamic. His father, Victor Drake, is strict and cold. His mother, Catherine Drake, distant, and his brothers, Jameson and Samuel Drake, are constantly in the way. What seems like a typical teenager's frustration is about to spiral into a dark and twisted reality. One fateful night, everything changes. A tragic discovery is made when Elliot's friends arrive at his house after a weekend outing. What begins as a typical visit soon turns into a shocking revelation: his entire family has been brutally murdered. The house is left in disarray, a bloody crime scene with no apparent motive. Was this a robbery gone wrong? Or was there something more sinister at play? The police arrive and immediately begin their investigation. Elliot and his three friends, Lena Williams, Max Carter, and Olivia Liv Thompson, are questioned separately. At first, the interrogators remain friendly, trying to make the teens feel comfortable. But as details begin to unravel, their initial stories no longer match the evidence. The detectives begin to apply subtle pressure, noting discrepancies, body language, and even their emotions. It becomes clear that one of them knows more than they're letting on, but who? As the story unfolds, Elliot's emotions remain unsettlingly detached. His behavior shifts between moments of calm, confusion, and feigned innocence. The more the detectives push, the more his carefully constructed story begins to crack. Eventually, the detectives confront him with undeniable evidence, including phone records, inconsistencies in his story, and the strange way he acted during the night of the murders. They suggest, almost casually, that he may have snapped under the pressure of a controlling father, emotional neglect, and a lifetime of frustration. The story reaches its peak when Elliot is forced to face the gravity of his actions. His calm demeanor falters, and the detectives, using their years of experience, guide him to a confession. They plant seeds of doubt, making him question his own motivations. Was this an act of rage? A moment of impulsive violence? Or was it something deeper? As he finally admits to the killings, the detectives press for a motive, only for Elliot to struggle to explain. The family that seemed perfect to the outside world was filled with tension and dark secrets. And in the end, what seemed like a tragic accident may have been an act of pure calculation. Then, shocking inconsistencies come to light, introducing a major twist. Elliot's friends reveal surprising details that contradict what he's confessed, leaving everyone, including the detectives, scrambling to make sense of it all. Just when it seems like the truth will finally be laid bare, the story ends with a cliffhanger. Who else could have been involved? What is the true reason behind the murders? After Elliot's admission, his friends Lena, Max, and Liv are summoned for another round of questioning. Their statements now seem to contradict each other, and pieces of the puzzle that once appeared to fit neatly together are now falling apart. Lena, who was always seen as the reliable one, tells a strange story about a late-night conversation with Elliot the evening before the murders. According to her, Elliot seemed unusually distant, almost as though he were already preparing for something monumental to happen. She claims he'd mentioned his family being in the way, but she thought it was just typical teenage rebellion. Now, with the murders hanging over her, that throwaway comment takes on a much darker tone. Max, ever the skeptic, seems to know more than he's letting on. Liv claims she didn't know anything out of the ordinary, but the detectives aren't buying it. Olivia, always the quiet observer, has been acting differently too. Her demeanor changed, eyes darting around nervously during questioning. As the detectives dig deeper into their interactions and relationships with Elliot, they begin to suspect that these friends may know more about the situation than they're willing to admit. And then, a bombshell. Elliot's phone records reveal something that shakes the detectives to their core. On the night of the murders, Elliot made a call that was traced to an unknown number one that, upon further investigation, belongs to someone from Victor Drake's past. Someone who had been in and out of prison. Someone with a dangerous reputation. Detective Parker pulls up a file on this individual, John Jax Marshall, a former associate of Victor who had been rumored to have a violent streak. The discovery suggests a connection between Jax and the murders that no one had suspected before. As the pieces continue to fall into place, Elliot is brought back in for further questioning. His demeanor is still unsettlingly calm, his responses still filled with contradictions. He continues to insist that he killed his family, but when pressed for a motive, he remains strangely elusive. Every time the detectives bring up Jax Marshall, he grows tense, defensive, and agitated. Something isn't right. In a breakthrough moment, Detective Davis challenges Elliot with a chilling theory. What if he wasn't the only one involved in the murders? What if Jax Marshall had been part of a plan to force Elliot into committing the horrific act? Was this an elaborate scheme, a plot to manipulate the troubled teen into doing something that was already in the works? At this point, Elliot breaks his silence, his expression changing from a blank mask to one of panic. The facade cracks. He reveals that Victor Drake, his father, had been hiding a dark secret. The family's wealth, the immaculate life they led, was built on illegal deals and shady business partnerships that Victor had made long before Elliot was born. Jax Marshall, it turns out, was an enforcer, a muscle for Victor's business dealings, and their relationship was more complex than anyone had known. Victor had been heavily involved with dangerous people like Jax, who had come to collect what was owed. But in the end, it wasn't just about the money. It was about control, power, and betrayal. The truth begins to unfold like a twisted puzzle. Elliot, it seems, had always been a pawn in his father's game, a game that involved manipulation, violence, and fear. The murders, horrific as they were, may not have been an act of spontaneous rage, but rather a result of a calculated plan that Victor had been orchestrating for years. Jax Marshall may have played a role in this plan, using Elliot as a tool to take down the family from within, forcing him to break. But as Elliot continues to talk, it becomes clear that there is something more sinister behind the murders, something that even he doesn't fully understand. Elliot starts to speak of voices, whispers in the night, strange urges that he couldn't control. At first, the detectives dismiss it as the ramblings of a traumatized teenager, but as they dig deeper into his family's history, they realize that there may be a darker, more twisted influence at play. Was this a family curse? Or was Elliot being manipulated into becoming a killer by someone or something else? The final twist comes when the detectives discover an old journal hidden in Victor's study. It's filled with cryptic notes about Elliot's birth, strange rituals, and an eerie reference to something called the Silent Killer. The more they read, the more they realized that Elliot may have been destined for something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Had his family known something about his fate long before he did? Was Elliot simply a victim of a dark prophecy that no one dared to speak of? In a shocking final moment, Elliot is led to a mirror and asked to look at himself. His face contorts as though he's seeing something he doesn't recognize, something lurking beneath the surface of his own soul. The detectives, now uncertain of what's real and what's imagined, are left questioning whether Elliot is the true killer or if something much darker is at work. The investigation into Elliot Drake has taken an unexpected turn. What began as a straightforward case of family murder has now spiraled into something far darker, far more dangerous than anyone could have anticipated. The detectives Parker and Davis are no longer dealing with just a disturbed teenager and his confession. They're dealing with a web of lies, betrayal, and a terrifying presence lurking behind it all. And now, the truth is beginning to reveal itself, but not in the way anyone expected. Detective Parker pores over the journal they found in Victor Drake's study, the cryptic notes growing more unsettling with each page. The references to a silent killer are becoming clearer. According to the journal, Elliot's family wasn't just wealthy, they were part of something ancient, something far beyond the realm of ordinary crime. Victor Drake, it seems, had been involved with occult practices for years, something he had kept hidden from his family, even from Elliot. The rituals, the symbols in the margins of the journal, and the strange drawings are all signs of something far darker than the detectives could have ever imagined. Meanwhile, Elliot is in custody, his mind unraveling in the interrogation room. Despite his confession, his behavior remains unsettlingly calm, almost detached. He continues to insist that he had no choice in what he did, that someone had been controlling him. But as the detectives push further, he becomes more erratic. His once steady facade is cracking, and he's beginning to show signs of paranoia, claiming that he's being watched, that the whispers are growing louder. "Who's watching you, Elliot?" Detective Davis presses him, leaning forward. "Who's making you hear those voices?" Elliot's eyes dart around the room, his fingers twitching nervously. It's them. The ones who've been watching. They said I had to. It was my purpose. The words make no sense, and yet they're terrifying. The detectives exchange a look, unsure of whether Elliot is losing his mind or if he's speaking the truth. But the journal they found confirms that there was something else going on. Victor had been part of an underground society, one that worshipped dark forces. And now it appears that Elliot, his own son, was destined to be part of that twisted legacy. As the investigation continues, another shocking discovery is made. Lena, one of Elliot's closest friends, comes forward with information that she had kept hidden. She admits that she had seen Elliot acting strangely in the days leading up to the murders. According to her, Elliot had been more distant than usual, almost like he was in a trance. He would talk about his father's plans, about things he couldn't remember saying. It was as if he were being pulled in two directions, one part of him wanting to fight, the other part surrendering to something far more sinister. But what makes Lena's statement even more troubling is that she claims she overheard a conversation between Elliot and Jax Marshall, the mysterious enforcer with ties to his father. Lena describes Jax as having an almost hypnotic influence on Elliot, convincing him to take certain actions, to follow through with Victor's plans, no matter what the cost. Lena says she never realized the full extent of their connection until now, but she believes that Elliot didn't just kill his family on impulse. He was manipulated, groomed for something much larger than himself. As Detective Parker follows this lead, it becomes clear that the relationship between Elliot and Jax wasn't just one of father and enforcer, it was something deeper. Jax had been grooming Elliot for years, slowly manipulating him into a puppet, someone who would do the bidding of those who controlled him. The manipulation didn't just start the night of the murders. It had been happening long before, through subtle coercion, through mind games, and through a twisted bond that made Elliot feel as though he had no other choice. But as Detective Davis digs deeper into Jax Marshall's past, they uncover a shocking truth. Jax wasn't just some enforcer, he had ties to the occult society that Victor Drake was a part of. He had been initiated into the dark rituals years ago, and it seems he had his own agenda, one that didn't align with Victor's. The deeper the detectives go into Jax's history, the more they realize that the society was not just about power and money, it was about control, about using people like Elliot as pawns in a game they didn't fully understand. The true horror begins to unfold as the detectives realize that the murder of Victor Drake and his family wasn't just a random act of violence, it was a part of a much larger plan. Elliot had been pushed into a position where he thought he had no escape, where he believed that the only way to survive was to kill the people who had manipulated him for so long. But as the investigation unravels further, it becomes clear that the killing was part of a ritual, a sacrifice designed to release a force that had been dormant for generations. In a shocking revelation, Elliot confesses that the night of the murders, he wasn't alone. Jax Marshall was there, but so was someone else, someone who had been watching from the shadows, someone who had been pulling the strings all along. The detectives are stunned when Elliot names a new figure, Celia Drake, his estranged aunt, a woman who had disappeared from the family's life years ago. The plot thickens as Detective Parker discovers that Celia had been in contact with Jax and other members of the occult society for years. She had been working behind the scenes, orchestrating events to lead up to this moment. It becomes clear that Celia was the true mastermind behind the murders, not Elliot, not Victor, and not even Jax. As the detectives close in on Celia, they realize they are dealing with something far more dangerous than they ever could have imagined. What started as a family tragedy has now become a quest for power, control, and an ancient ritual that could change the course of history. The more the detectives uncover, the more they begin to question whether they'll be able to stop the forces that have been unleashed. Don't forget to add your thought on the comment section and subscribe to the channel for more stories of Dark Soul.